Thanks a lot. I want to start with one logistical question. Just press the cursor to advance the slides.
Yes.
Is that right? Great. Thank you. All right. Get our little thing flying away first. So I go to a lot like a lot of you. I go to a lot of conferences, and I hear a lot of people talk about sustainability, innovation, entrepreneurship, and I'm constantly frustrated because I've come to the conclusion that there's a lot of people that make a living talking about these things rather than actually doing them. And now I don't pretend to have all of the answers. I'll caveat that from the very beginning. But I do have a theory, and I do have a belief. My theory is, or my belief, let's start there, is that business, as by far the largest and most powerful institution on this planet, not only has the opportunity, but we have the onus to actually create change for the better, particularly as it relates to change for the better for the environment and the improvement of the social condition of all of us. And the theory is something that hopefully you'll see is a little bit more than a theory. The theory is something that's hopefully a little bit more than a theory. It's something that we're putting to practice in our business model. It's our due. So with that, I wanted to sort of set the stage for my very ambitious and perhaps very foolish goal over the next now probably 29 minutes, which is to show you actually how, really, a business can create change on a very large scale. And more importantly, how you can design it into your business or whatever it is that you do. Because I believe if more of us did that, we could catalyze change on a scale that none of us have ever seen before. So first of all, I want to start with a show of hands. Who knows about Method? Who's familiar with the brand? All right. Well, that's better than I thought, maybe 30%. So this is what we make. We make cleaning products. They're green cleaning products. They're fancy looking cleaning products. And that's essentially the core idea behind the brand. And it's a reflection of the backgrounds of the two co-founders, myself and this guy on your right, Eric Ryan. We started this business out of that apartment, which is an apartment on a major thoroughfare in the city of San Francisco. You can see the sort of green scum that's growing on the steps. And Eric comes from a background of branding and advertising. He's one of the most brilliant brand marketers that I've ever known. My background is incredibly nerdy. I made the charts that kind of Al uses in his movie. This is the cheesiest graphic and the easiest way that I've figured out over the years to explain what I did before I started Method. I'm a chemical engineer by background or by education, environmental scientist. Started my career in product design and ended up here at a place called the Carnegie Institution. And I worked on the Kyoto Protocol and I worked on science that was supposed to lead to policy change. And my impetus for starting Method with Eric was really the experience that I had there. And I learned a couple of things while I was there. Number one, I was preaching to the converted. There are brilliant scientists that work at the Carnegie Institution and work on this stuff. I was not one of them. What I learned was that my work was going into papers that were getting published in journals such as the Journal of Biogeochemical Cycles, which I do have an authorship in. And not to discredit that, but for me, what I'm really interested in is how do you syndicate this? How do you make this part of people's lives, culture? And I wasn't doing that there. And then secondly, this is in the mid to late 90s. My second insight was that as a green consumer at the time, I was trying to live a green lifestyle. Every single brand that I patronized asked me to make a sacrifice. The core idea of the brand was the earth is dying and you need to save it. So buy this inferior product that doesn't work as well, smells bad, you gotta hide it under the sink. It's brown, it's definitely brown. Maybe it's green, but it's not any of the colors other than that. And to do your penance for the planet. And I thought, I actually rolled the tape back. I couldn't think of a single brand that had been successful off of a core proposition of sacrifice. And so we set out to sort of change that. And as Eric and I started looking at categories to enter, we came across the cleaning category. And we started looking at this one because all of the players were so closely aligned. And as you think about style and substance and you think about where the lowest hanging fruit was, this was probably the easiest place to start. Lots of toxic products, lots of really ugly products. And so in the summer of 2000, we joined what we call the 4% Club. 4% of businesses actually make it beyond the initial stages. And we knew nothing about cleaning products, absolutely nothing. In the early days, there were a lot of trials and tribulations. I want to show you a couple of those. So the way we would sell originally is we came up with some prototype product. We'd put it in a bag and we'd walk into a grocery store at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd corner the store manager and we'd start pitching the guy. And you basically have about 10 seconds before that guy throws you out of his store. I mean, try this sometime. Walk into a grocery store and try to sell the store manager, the busiest person in the store, a cleaning product. So we did this for about a year before we actually had a success. And this is a picture of the first success that we had, which is at a grocery store about 20 miles south of San Francisco in a suburban area. And we walked in that morning, and this was our third follow-up visit with this buyer, and he said, "Oh yeah, I got space cut for you on aisle 5. You got to get product here today." Well, we had no product, we had no production, we had nothing. So we drove back up to San Francisco. We went around to the work places of all of our friends who we had given samples to. We got their keys. Eric got all of the half-empty bottles that we had given them. I went to the lab, made up some more product. We borrowed some cardboard boxes from the wine company we were subletting space from. We put all this stuff together. I bought that invoice book that you saw on the previous page, which is like the one where you get at the diner, you know, the waiter rips it off and hands it to you. And we put these products on the shelf on February 28th, 2001. And none of which were actually real products. They were just sort of samples and prototypes. But from that, we had to start refilling these orders. We built that out to about 20 stores over the next couple of months. I borrowed a truck from my parents. My parents gave me their car, and we would fill up the back of the car and with method, and we'd go around to these 20 stores and we would count bottles that we had sold. We would handwrite invoices, and we would start to learn how are we doing versus the competitive set. We started going to trade shows. That is a window that we bought at Home Depot, which is it's kind of like a home base or a B&Q here, which we then returned after the trade show because we were running the business out of our own pockets. You know, we've got all sorts of competitive product and stuff, and this was sort of the, you know, just the slumming it early days. People didn't have desks, so you had to build your desk on the first day. This is Fred. And we also learned that sometimes we made some hiring mistakes. This was the car of our VP of Finance, who wasn't paying her parking tickets. And obviously not as fiscally responsible as you want for your early stage business. And I'm skipping a lot of chapters here, but in really bootstrapping and kind of building this combination of style and substance into our brand, we've been able to be successful. In 2006, we were the 7th fastest growing company in the United States. We were actually the fastest growing company in the state of California, which for a soap company I think is sort of surprising. And we, in 2007, were named the 16th most innovative company in the world by Fast Company. So that's, you know, real quick background on Method. But my point here is just to give you a little bit of flavor of Method so that we can talk about what we're actually doing and why that's important. And I talked about how does a business create change. In order to kind of answer that question, I first want to talk about, well, how does change actually occur? So I'll do that with a story. I got the chance to go to Iceland, flag of Iceland, in the summer of 2007 with Bill McDonough, one of the guys that wrote that Cradle to Cradle book. Bill's a friend of mine. And he does a retreat with about 20 people every summer, and he invited me and I got to go. And while we were there, we met with the president of Iceland. And the president of Iceland told us this amazing story, that in the late 70s, Iceland was 90% dependent on foreign imports of energy. Most of it was coal for their energy needs. And roll the tape forward today, they get 100% of their electricity and about 80% of all of the energy needs for the entire country from domestic renewable sources of energy. And yeah, Iceland's a small country, but if you think about an entire country flip-flopping its energy infrastructure from, imported, non-renewable fossil-based to completely renewable, more or less, in about 25, 30 years, it's pretty amazing. And so I asked the president of Iceland. He was sitting in front of me. I said, how did this happen? Did you just sort of decree that it would be so? You're the president, right? And he said, no. He said, no. What happened is Iceland looks like this. There's sort of one building, and then maybe three miles across this barren valley, there's sort of 3 other buildings. And he said, what would happen is enterprising individuals in these pockets around this very sparsely populated place would make use of the resources that it had. In a lot of cases, geothermal. They'd tap down into the geothermal vents and kind of do that. And then they'd get across, maybe 3 months later, they'd walk across to their neighbors, and then they'd talk about, well, maybe we should build a bigger one that both of us can use. And slowly but surely, these things sort of popped up in pockets, and it built critical mass to the point that now when you drive around Iceland, this is what you see. You see these big geothermal plants that are providing the energy, or most of it, for the country that's now scaled up. And what's even more important is they're now attracting business, despite the financial troubles that Iceland has had since I was there. They're attracting businesses now that are very energy intensive because of their abundant supply of renewable energy. So what? What I think is really interesting about this is if you think about the way that this change occurs, it's actually exactly the way that species evolve. So Darwin, everybody knows Darwin. He studied things, and he came up with a theory that change, or speciation, happens slowly and gradually. And that's represented by kind of a slow meandering diversification in 2 dimensions, as you see on this graph. These 2 guys, Gould and Eldridge, in 1972, they studied some fossil records, and they proved that Darwin was right about the slow part, and he was wrong about the gradual part. And so what actually happens is, as you meander over time, which is north-south on that graph, you come to certain points where all of a sudden speciation happens really rapidly, and you go to the left or the right, and then it sort of happens over and over again. If you flip those 2 axes on themselves, what you get is a step function. And this is my point, which is evolution over time happens in fits and starts. So not much is going on, and then there's a stress on the system. Could be a cataclysmic event, could be a meteor, it could be environmental change. But then what happens is species evolve very rapidly to a new equilibrium, and then they just kind of hang out until they need to change again. And this is exactly what happened in Iceland. It's exactly how we evolve, and it's exactly the model that businesses can employ in their business models to create change. And so that's what I want to talk about next. How are we doing that? Well, in America, everything is bigger is better. You guys kind of know that, right? Method Soap Company, we were looking at the laundry category, and this is probably the greatest example of bigger is better in America. In 2004, when we started looking at this category, laundry detergents came in jugs that were about this big, okay? And they were so heavy that many people couldn't carry them, and you had to dangle them off the side of a table, and they had a tap on them that you would then use to then fill up like 6 ounces of liquid to put in your laundry. And we started looking at this and we thought, consumers hate that experience. And it's incredibly wasteful because most of these laundry detergents are 80% water. So we developed the first of its kind in the States, which was a triple concentrated laundry detergent. And I won't go into the development of that. It's actually harder than it seems, just taking the water out. But we developed this very small laundry detergent. Now that little bottle is the same as that very large jug that I just described. And in the summer of 2004, we launched this nationally with Target, the second largest mass market retailer in the States. And this is the product here. This is the set that we had. And so we were chugging along with national distribution with Target. It was doing pretty well. We went and talked to the other large mass market retailer, Walmart, We managed to get a test market at Walmart. I call this our Where's Waldo photo. Method's right down there. And you can actually see those jugs right above us. Those actually do the same amount of loads of laundry that you're talking about there. We did not proceed with this test for sort of obvious reasons. But through the process of working with Walmart, we kind of told them about all of the benefits of kind of compacting this laundry detergent down to a smaller size. It's better for the consumer, it's better for the environment, it's better for you in the shelf space. They spend millions of dollars shipping laundry detergent to their own stores every year. So Walmart thought that was kind of a good idea, I think. About a year later, we saw this. This is a brand from Unilever. I believe the Unilever brand here is Persil, if I'm not mistaken. Over in the States, it's called All. And this was triple concentrated laundry. You can see some of the very same language. Is it the jet lag, or is that thing shaking? Okay. You can actually see some of the very same language coming out with a very explicit green message. The ad on the left was placed in August of 2004. The ad on the right was in December of 2005. I love the quote on the bottom from an intern at Unilever. Keep that in mind for 2 slides from now. For those of you who can't see it, it says, "I'm a huge fan of Method, engrossed in your products." While I was interning at Unilever in the laundry business, I was actually part of the All Small and Mighty launch, and of course, we looked to Method as a guiding light in the concentrate world. Keep that in mind. As this idea caught on, Walmart and P&G started talking about this. P&G developed their Tide 2X, not quite as good as 3X, but they did 2X. And Walmart started talking about laundry detergent saving the world. As an interesting sidebar, by the way, I went to the TED conference this year in February, and I listened to John Fleming, the CMO of Walmart, talk about how Walmart and P&G had gotten together and they had created all these savings of having invented this compacted laundry detergent, and that this other company, Unilever, actually was the first to market with this stuff. And anyway, I had to go up to him afterwards and correct him on that. But I can see why he had that perception. This is an article from USA Today in May of 2007 from the director of marketing for Unilever, who was delighted that P&G and everybody else had decided to follow their lead. And then a little later on, here in 2008, Walmart switched their whole category over to compacted laundry detergents. And so the point of this is, and by the way, this 400 million gallons of water, 95 million pounds of plastic, and 125 million pounds of cardboard were literally the stats that were in our sales presentation earlier. So anyway, the point of all of this is that a new equilibrium was achieved in the laundry category that was a little better for the consumer. We've been talking a little bit cradle to cradle the last day or two. In cradle to cradle terms, this is sort of the eco-efficient. It's sort of the less bad variety. This is certainly not the world's most sustainable, or it's not a sustainable laundry detergent. But a new equilibrium was achieved in the category here. And the point of all of that is that it's actually the first step in that evolutionary process of moving the entire laundry category, not just what Method does, but the entire laundry category towards a more sustainable situation. We did it once. We're already working on the next evolution of that. It's coming out very soon. I wish I could show it to you, but maybe next year I can, for sure. And some people might ask, is that something that bothers you, that people sort of copied you and that they're kind of taking credit for your work? The taking credit part, maybe. The copying, no. It's actually very much part of our business model. Our business model is to be that catalytic change, to create a new equilibrium in the category so that we can do it again. And that's how we compete. Our smallest competitor in the United States is a $5 billion company. That's the smallest one, okay? So we're not going to win by playing their game. We've got to play a different game. And so if we can be that sort of guy that you've got to follow or you're going to look outdated, then we can compete in our categories. So I'll give you 2 other real quick examples. One from wipes. So cleaning wipes. A lot of people think cleaning wipes, they're nice, cottony, soft sort of things. They're all made out of plastic. And this is an article from the Chicago Tribune. It's actually from 2003. And in 2003, they wrote this article about the wastefulness of wipes. There are about 75 million kilograms of wipes thrown in landfills every year in America alone. And it's all non-biodegradable material that's sort of lost forever. So with method, our theory is it's not about changing the consumer and making her sacrifice, as I mentioned before. It's about changing the stuff she consumes and redesigning it. And so for us, it wasn't about don't use wipes, because as evidenced by the fact that 75 million kilograms of these things were getting thrown away, people weren't going to abandon a convenient format. The idea was, let's redesign it. So we brought to market the very first wipe that you could actually put in a compost made out of wood pulp. And that was a nice launch. This is actually, the benefit of designing the product this way was actually tested a couple of years ago. I was in Michigan for some business meetings. I was walking along this beach. This is on Lake Michigan. And I came across this. And I was like, that's some litter on the beach. And I picked it up. And it was one of our wipes. And I could tell by the pattern that was on there. And if you look closely and you kind of know what you're looking at, you can see that this thing is in its first stages of actually biodegrading. And I saved this wipe. I actually brought it home with me. But yeah, which shows you how weird I am. But it was really important because this inevitably sort of happens when you put stuff in the world. And I was able to see firsthand that what we were designing was working in a little bit different way than the traditional stuff. And yes, just like that laundry example, people have started to catch on. This is a brand that was created by Clorox. That is our smallest competitor over in the States that I mentioned. And they have a new brand called Greenworks, which is they're talking about biodegradability and natural in cleaning wipes. So that's the first player to enter the space with a biodegradable or compostable wipe after us. So those are a couple of product examples. I'll real quickly give you one more example. It's not just about what we make, it's kind of about how we make it. So we have a national, we actually have global distribution, or not global distribution, we have national distribution in the US, we have some distribution here in the UK and a couple other countries. So we move a lot of stuff around. A large part of the carbon footprint of our business is moving stuff from where we make it to our customers. And as we started looking at that, we said, well, what are the ways that we can improve now the footprint that we've got? And we started looking at biodiesel, the good biodiesel, the stuff that comes from waste oil. And we actually worked with J.B. Hunt. We said, hey, we want to, J.B. Hunt's the largest trucking company in the United States. And we said, hey, we want to create freight from biodiesel, from this waste oil stuff that we've got. And of course, the first thing they did is they looked at us like we had, 4 heads, and said, they're from Arkansas. We were in Arkansas, and they're like, I don't know about that. But slowly but surely, we kind of convinced them. And we initially launched this project with only B20, with only 20% biodiesel in the fuel mix, with one truck. And this is the truck. And it was only running from Southern California to Northern California. So a real small proportion of what we were doing as a total freight for our business. But what was really interesting is that as we started looking at the numbers, this is some data on one of our trucks that began in April of 2008. As we started looking at some data with some of the improvements that we had made to the aerodynamics of the truck and the biodiesel that we were running, we were actually getting on average, about a 15% mileage benefit on these trucks, which translates to about a 30 to 50% carbon savings on that freight because of the biodiesel in the fuel mix. And J.B. Hunt started thinking, rising fuel costs, these things run a little bit better. That's sort of interesting. And we were able to expand that program to the Northeast. We have 4 distribution centers, one in Southern California, which this truck was running out of. We now have 6 more trucks online in the Northeast, running 80% of all of our freight from our largest distribution center in the Northeast. And these trucks have actually gone now to 50% biodiesel. And the reason I kind of gave you a little bit of nitty-gritty on that is that the really important thing here is we could have tried to start with 100% waste oil, right? And you can do that, right? I run my car off of 100% waste oil in the United States. You can do it. But by starting small, improving the business case in a micro scale, we were able to then go from just one truck to 60% of our freight out of California, to 80% out of New Jersey, and we now have a significant portion of our overall freight as a company that's running 30 to 50% lower carbon footprint than our entire distribution system. And I think in a couple of years, basically, we'll have the whole thing done. And so again, creating a new equilibrium there, but you do it by designing this change in at a very granular scale, and then building upon it. And the reason I think that this is important is again, sort of using the cradle-to-cradle language. We work really close. I mentioned Bill before. Michael, the other author, is a friend of mine, and we work very closely with Michael actually on product development. And they use this language here: eco-efficiency, eco-effectiveness. And one of the things that I've always been frustrated by is a lot of people, they see the vision, they understand what eco-effectiveness means, and they really struggle to figure out how to get from where they are to there. And I think that what we've done is by building in these small changes, and creating new equilibriums along the way, we've figured out a way to eventually get there. So lastly, we've talked about change, we've talked about how method, a couple of examples anyway, about how we're building it into products and in the way we make our products. What are the skills that an organization needs in order to do that stuff? Right? I mean, so yeah, we did that, but how are we doing things a little bit differently? I showed this slide before. We talked a little bit about substance and style. The short answer to my question about how you do it and what skills does an organization need is design. But it's design unlike you understand it today. Most of the time when people talk about our brand, those of you who raised your hand and know about our brand, when you think about design, this is what you think about: beautiful packaging, vibrant colors, right? It's a green cleaning product brand that doesn't look like a green cleaning product brand. But I think design is the most confusing word in the English language, and I'm actually out to redefine it because I don't like when people talk about design as aesthetics. It just drives me nuts. And the example I'll give you is this. So I'm an Apple nut. I got iPhone in my pocket. Use my Apple, my Mac laptop. I got all the gadgets. iPhone changed my life. But I often feel this way about my Mac. This was a campaign, a lot of you guys may know it, that Greenpeace ran in 2006 after they did a study on the green practices of computer manufacturers, and Apple was kind of near the bottom. And what I think is really interesting about this is I think it's indicative that the definition of design itself is changing in the 21st century. We're going from a place where the icons of design that are even to this day still continually lauded as the icons of design are sort of incomplete in the 21st century. And they're incomplete because they're designed wonderfully only in the present tense. It's a laptop or a PDA or something that works great for your lifestyle today, but it's not designed from materials that were something before, and when you're done with it, it's not going to be something in the future and become something else. Contrast that with the carpet in our offices. This is a product that comes from Interface. I think Shaw was mentioned before. But this entire carpet industry has sort of changed, and this carpet product is, yeah, it's beautiful and functional when we're walking on it in our offices. But more importantly, it's made from recycled materials. There's only 2 materials in the product. And when we're done with it, they're going to take it back and turn it into new carpet for somebody else. So a different definition of design that's great, it's not just beautiful and functional today, but tomorrow and yesterday as well. And that very much is kind of the way we run our business. We have not, I don't have the time to kind of go into our design principles, but one of them is we believe in reincarnation. And if you walk around the halls of method with me, you'll continually hear me say, I want things to have a past and a future. And it's this design principle that we try to build into the design process under a new definition of design. And what I think is absolutely fascinating about this is when you start to think about design in this expanded way, who the designer is fundamentally changes, and what the design process is fundamentally changes. Suddenly, everyone must become a designer, and everything must be designed. And so we go from a world where the designer's domain is product, and thinking about how do we design that product, to now the designer has to think about product in the context of the company that's creating that product. It's not just about what you're making, it's how you're making it. I showed you, our biodiesel program is one example of that. It comes from a culture of people that are making those things. And that product sits within a category. And it's a category of competitors, customers, vendors, et cetera. And that category actually sits within a cultural context. Bloggers and everything else that kind of goes into the things that are defining our culture these days. And it's only when the designer is thinking on this broadest scale that she can bring into the design process the things that are required to create that next equilibrium and move the ball 5 yards down the pitch rather than trying to throw the Hail Mary pass that nobody ever catches. And the most important thing about being able to build in design under this new definition into a culture is the way that you build it into the daily way that you operate your business. At Method, we call ourselves People Against Dirty. These are some of the People Against Dirty that we work with. We want our workspace to be a reflection of the brand. It's very stylish when you walk in. This is what happens when you walk past there. This is the substance part. The place is a friggin' mess. But it's an open office environment. Everything's on the walls. And every single person, whether you're working on closing the books at the end of the month for the finance team, whether you're working on operations, whether you're working on marketing, whatever, is part of the design process. And it's absolutely critical. And the way we guide that is with what we call our mission, obsessions, and values. The mission and the obsessions I won't go into, but those are basically our mission and the strategies that we use to win. The values I will mention, there are 5 of them. Care, innovation, and collaboration. Those are not totally surprising. We have our definitions of those that are unique to us, but they are critical. The last 2 I did want to mention. One is how would you keep Method weird? Or keep Method weird. And what that's about is every single person that gets a job at Method or interviews for a job, if you get far enough in the process, you'll be asked to do a homework assignment where you get a strategic question, a tactical question, and a third question. The third question is always, how would you keep Method weird? That's all you get. And you have to come back and present to everyone that you're going to work with how you're going to keep Method weird. And it has an incredible effect on orienting the culture around the right types of behaviors to be a little bit different, to be able to do this design thinking that I'm talking about. And believe me, there are people that want to keep it way too weird. Okay, believe me, it also has a very nice screening effect. Yeah. The last value is what would MacGyver do? So who knows who MacGyver is? Okay, good. A little bit of an American context, but and what that's about is about resourcefulness. As a challenger brand, as the little guy in the space, we need to make do with a lot less than what our competitors have, and be able to punch a little bit harder than our weight. And what this core skill that we've got, our people have got to have, what they must possess is an ability to be resourceful. And if you walk around the office with me, you will see pictures of MacGyver kind of all over our office. And it's a way of reinforcing the different way in which we work. And it's with that cultural context that we're able to create the types of innovations that I mentioned. And those innovations in small steps lead to great societal change. Thank you.